Hi everyone. So welcome to this video where we're going to explore the symbolism of the acorn using a Jungian perspective. In addition to that, not only are we going to explore kind of the deep collective symbolism of the acorn, but also give space to explore our own personal preferences and perceptions of acorns, as well as provide some facts on a symbol. That way we're exploring this from a many different angles of what an acorn can mean to us, whether it comes up in dreams or our own personal experiences of the acorn when we're out in nature, and also what we can possibly learn from this symbol. So before we begin, we're going to take kind of a moment to kind of give space to allow us to do some symbolic and dream or symbolic work, excuse me. And so that's kind of important whenever we're kind of exploring symbols or myths from a Jungian view. We want to give space and kind of slow down and allow our body to relax and give that space for the symbol work and the deep psychic work to allow to take place. So with that, if you're sitting somewhere, just notice where you are in your environment. You're sitting in a chair, notice your feet on the floor and your body against the chair. Maybe you're laying down watching this. Wherever it may be, just notice where your body is in this current moment. And now with that too, because we're taking kind of a nature focus, notice if you hear any nature sounds. Maybe you have a window open and you can hear some songbirds fluttering. Maybe there's some buzz from a bee nearby, or maybe it's raining and you hear some pounding of the rain on top of the roof and the wind kind of rattling the windows. Whatever it may be, just kind of notice what is around you. Now take that attention that you have around your environment and kind of focus on your breath. Notice as the breath goes in and out. Kind of focus on the temperature of breath. Feel the cooler air come into your nostrils and the warmer air exit your body. And take a few more breaths on your own time. And when you're ready, we're going to move on to the next activity. Okay, so for this activity, you have a piece of paper or maybe a note application on your phone or computer. You might want to get that nearby. So what we're going to do, again, we're going to kind of give space to exploring our own associations with the acorn before we get into our classic kind of interpretation. So why are we doing this? Well, again, the thing to remember from a Jungian view is that not only do we have a deep collective unconscious, which is probably the hallmark of analytical psychology, but we also have a personal consciousness. So what that means is symbols are going to vary for each person depending on their own experiences. In addition, because of the collective, we can also go into deeper work to see what those symbols may mean. So from my view, whenever we're exploring a symbol, it's important to give our space of our own interpretations first, or it doesn't have to be first, but our own interpretations, and then also explore the collective interpretations. So if you're ever using like a dream book, a symbol book, or maybe a website online about the meaning of a dream symbol or symbols in general, that tends to have a collective approach or a collective interpretation. So long story short, we're going to give some space to have our own associations. So when you hear the word acorn, what comes to mind? And the biggest thing to remember is there's no right or wrong answer. It's just allowing your own perceptions to come up. And I think the challenge is going to be try not to censor whatever comes to mind. Think of this as kind of a free association kind of activity, write whatever comes up. And so again, you're welcome to pause the video, take a few moments to do this, and just write whatever ideas or thoughts you have with the acorn. And again, above my head right now is a cartoon image of an acorn. So when we're ready, we'll move on to the next slide. Okay, so now that we've had our own time to reflect on our own interpretation and associations with the acorn, here's some facts of what we're talking about. So acorns are the seeds for oak trees. And why I selected acorns is in the field of personality development in counseling and psychotherapy, we hear quite a bit the metaphor of an acorn growing into an oak tree, especially from a humanistic standpoint. So if you're ever taking a theories of personality class or an intro to counseling course, uh, sometimes it's very common to describe humanistic, and especially Carl Rogers' view of growth and development as a seed turning into a tree. And so with that, what we're seeing with the symbolism of the acorn is potential, a potential of transformation from going from one thing to another thing. And so sticking with it, that's kind of the explanation of why I selected this symbol is just the reality of an acorn is we see it used quite a bit in cooking, not just in for humans, but animals. It's a common food staple. And when we look at the nutritional values of acorns, it's high in fat. Acorns also take time. They're starting from something about the size of your thumb and growing into a massive tree. So once they're in the ground, they can take anywhere from 6 to 24 months to start to mature and sprout out of the ground. What I found interesting in kind of doing research with the acorn is where the word comes from. So it's believed that the word acorn derives from an old Gothic word, acran. Again, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it seems that the meaning of that word is fruit of the unenclosed land. So if you've ever been in a forest, especially in the northeast of North America, big oak trees are constantly kind of easy to grow in a massive forest. And we'll talk about why that is in a moment. But so the acorn itself is seeing a fruit of the land that has not really been developed. It is like that virgin land, and here's the fruit that comes from it. So just kind of sticking with more about the acorn is if you notice that seed, again, they're about the size of your thumb and they have some heft to them that they're too heavy for wind disposal. So, or dispersal, sorry. So what I mean by that, if you're familiar with dandelions, you've seen when they turn to seed, they have those white little parachute things that quickly get moved by wind or by when someone accidentally hits a dandelion, whatever it may be, they can easily go into the air. And so with these acorns, they can't really get moved by the wind. They just drop to the ground. And so what the acorn relies on then is the dispersal has to occur not through the wind, but through other agents, and typically animals such as birds and squirrels. So as we know, again, if you ever spend time in nature, squirrels are notorious for collecting acorns and burying them in some location or hiding them in some location for future use. And typically, some birds do this as well. These animals tend to have a good idea or memory of where they are, but like anything, any memory, something's going to slip up. So what happens is when an animal forgets or a squirrel forgets where those acorns are, that acorn has the potential to grow into a tree. And again, that's the dispersal element with this too. In addition, some oak trees can tolerate being exposed to fire. So fire clears the landscape for more oak trees to grow. So there can be fire resistant in a way. And what that helps with the acorn is when there is a fire, other plant species may not survive that fire. So that allows the acorn to actually grow in a kind of new cleared land. Again, historically, as I mentioned earlier, acorns were commonly seen in diets throughout cultures. And I'm going to include some of those videos. I'm going to include some of those videos. Sorry, I had to pause the video for a second. I'm going to include some of those videos in the description below of ways that people have used to cook acorns with this. In addition to what is important, I think, to know with acorns is they contain a substance called tannins. Again, not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, But tannins is this really bitter kind of chemical compound that is a defense for plants from predators. So it doesn't taste good when eating it. And it also can, if we eat too much of it, can cause issues with protein processing or protein breakdown metabolism. Therefore, what's interesting is many animals, and again, including humans, we found ways to compensate for the tannins in acorns. And typically the recipes that I'm going to be showing, a common method is we're going to soak it. So we're soaking acorns in water. And so again, some animals usually can go after, or excuse me, eat acorns after they've been soaked in water or kind of decomposed for some bit, again, to let the tannins kind of decrease in those acorns. So I'm going to, again, just a reminder, in the description below are some videos of different traditions of cooking acorns in food. Okay. So now we're going to explore the Jungian symbolism. We have written down our own personal interpretations of what acorns to me means to me. I have briefly given some kind of facts and ecological perspectives of acorns. There's much more information out there. And if this kind of sparks your curiosity, highly recommend to learn more about acorns from various different perspectives. So when we look at the Jungian symbolism of acorns, already we kind of addressed that in a manner for a moment. I talked about how humanistic modalities of counseling and psychotherapy use the acorn as a metaphor of the right conditions are going to allow someone to develop and flourish and reach their full potential. So the acorn needs the right conditions. Maybe there's a fire that's taken place. Maybe a squirrel has buried it and even forgotten about it. And now it can grow and develop. So from a Jungian view, we're seeing this not only as transformation, but also as potentiality. And so according to the dream books that I have utilized, and one of my favorites is the Penguin's Book of Symbolism. Book of Symbolism, is that acorns can be linked similar to traits of an egg. So egg can represent fertility, plenty, prosperity, and fruitfulness. So what that means, again, there's potential, and there's potential for growth. So what's interesting, we're going to have two polarities with the acorn. The acorn itself represents from seed to ground, but it's all about transformation. And so we have the material, the seed in the ground goes in the material ground, has the potential to transform into something spiritual from tree to air. So there's a really a strong connection between transformation from kind of your basic material component to higher spiritual components. And then it can kind of, in Western Europe, it can be seen quite commonly in Christian symbols. And again, like whether it's architecture of churches, or also certain priest class would have the acorn in their robe and attire kind of wear. We could also see some acorns on family crests. And so again, we see this potential of the material to the spiritual. And it's the interconnection between the material and the spiritual. So it's all about transformation. And so if we explore, again, from a Jungian perspective, when we talk about the material and the spiritual, we're also referring to conscious and unconscious materials. So whenever you're exploring a symbol, it's going to have multiple meanings. And we can explore multiple meanings through the term called circumambulation. It means if we move around the symbol from different perspectives, we're going to gather more information. In addition to this, because this is a symbol of transformation, going from a seed to a tree, we're also seeing connections between conscious and unconscious material and masculine and feminine components. Every symbol, for the most part, is going to have both a bipolar spectrum, one end to the other tend to be opposites, but in the middle is kind of the balance between those components. So the seed itself symbolizes the feminine elements of birth, right? We have fertility, plenty, prosperity, and fruitfulness, right? And as the tree grows, we're going to have the masculine energy and the virility and the power of kind of the masculine symbol. And to get very Freudian, typically we refer to that as the phallic symbol. So it's growing from the ground. So to sum all this up, essentially what we're talking about with acorns is about transformation, starting from the deep material, right, and moving up to the sky. And now again, what we can learn from the acorn. What I appreciate a lot with the Jungian model of human development is we have to experience uncomfortable things, confront our demons, so to say, and explore the void of humanity, unconsciousness, and that's how we grow and develop. So, in order for the acorn to turn into a tree, it has to be taken away from its mother, its family, right? And then it has to be moved somewhere else and buried, okay? Either by a squirrel, a bird, or some sort of way. And it's buried in darkness with very little light. And in that darkness, right, that void, that's where the transformation begins. And so, what I, again, to sum this up, in Western culture, we tend to really strive and hope that our life is going to be a positive linear direction. And that, we have this expectation in society that we must be happy, we must be successful, whatever must there may be. And we tend to avoid the uncomfortableness. But again, time and time again, we know that the uncomfortableness is what allows growth and transformation to occur. So we deal with the uncomfortableness in the ground, and then we're going to grow and develop and then enter the more spiritual and air elements. So essentially, it is all about a symbol of the potential to grow. And that makes sense because we're talking about a plant turning into a tree. Okay, so in closing, let's kind of wrap all of these up for a moment. So we explored, we started off again by giving space to explore symbol work. And then coming to a close, we're going to kind of wrap up what we talked about. So now with the activity, you have your own kind of perceptions of what an acorn means to you. We've talked about some facts of the acorn and explored how the core from a Jungian viewpoint and the collectiveness of an acorn is about transformation and growth. So again, kind of connecting with that in mind is maybe you have a different perspective of an acorn. Maybe something else came to mind with it, or maybe you're like, oh no, duh, this is what I think the symbolism of an acorn meant. So now with that knowledge, what can we do with it? So I think what can be positive is now we just have a new understanding of when we're looking at acorns and oak trees. So what I appreciate again from Jungian as well as ecopsychology is there's that interconnection between the material world and our psychological world. And it's easy to go throughout the life really kind of out of awareness of the environment around us. So hopefully what this kind of video may plant the seed, so to say, is next time you stumble across an acorn or an oak tree, it allows a time of just a brief moment of reflection and interconnection between what that acorn means to you. So if you have the opportunity to be in the woods or around oak trees or acorns, it may be helpful to just take a moment to observe all that's around you and what comes up. Again, give that space, get some groundedness, take a few breaths, and have that space to see what other associations or images come to mind when you're kind of reflecting and observing the nature around you. So thank you for all this. I'm going to end the video there. I hope you have a good day. And if you have the opportunity and availability, and depending on the time of year and location you're at, if you have time, spend a few moments outdoors. So thank you. Have a good day.